simple chart and a very easy way to understand what he's trying to put in. Okay, so this is the yoga psychology, and I try to put it in simple, some kind of a simple writing. So now we have memory of some pain and pleasure, right? Like some memory is there in our mind of some pain and pleasure we have experienced. So, say for example, like you have some food or some movie you have enjoyed or some thing that you have enjoyed. There's a memory of that. Now, that food or that place you have been or whatever object that you have indulged in, it creates a sense of happiness, or if it's a good thing, and if it's a negative thing, then it creates a sense of aversion, hatred. Okay, so this is at a very subtle level. We don't know this. What we know is that when we think of this object or when we are drawn to this object, there is a certain sensory gratification. We seek the sensory gratification. So this happens at the gross level. The outer level, what is happening is we just know that something has happened in us, and before we realize, we are out there with that movie, or we are eating that gulab jamun pizza or whatever. So this outward thing is all that we understand. We don't know that why this has happened. And because we seek this, we are actually experiencing this. And when we experience it, what it does, it is actually adding to this repository of memory. And it acts as a trigger for the future. Okay, so now at a gross level, all that we know is we are experiencing this thing that we love, we enjoy, we are experiencing this. Well, if it's a good thing, sattvic thing, like meditation also, it is like that, it adds on. But the thing is, it doesn't have so much of an addictive quality to that, but it adds on as well. So good and bad, both. Okay. So the gross level of sense objects, of our mind interacting with the things we love, this gross level, we experience it. But the subtle level, which is happening at the mind, is something that is hidden from us. So this subtle level is where storage of memory is, of all the past indulgences. Each time we have actually involved and indulged in something, it has created a certain impression. And this is the reason why we feel this attraction towards something and repulsion towards some other things. Now, most of us are not able to see this. And all that we realize is we have a certain things that we seek after and certain things we run away from. That is all that we experience. So now let us look from a yogic perspective. What is actually happening? Okay, the second, the same chart, the second part of that. What is the yogic transformation of this kleshas, or the yogic perspective of this? Okay, so when we have a memory or of the storage of memory, it's called in yogic language as karmashaya. Okay, so this karmashaya is this repository of all our past impressions. So there in this karmashaya, every movie you have watched, every every pizza that you have had, every coffee that you have had, all that which has given you pleasure and pain in life, this impression is created. And this impression is actually not something which we say as some storage or account that some God is keeping. It is actually in our own subconscious or in our own unconscious. These impressions are lurking in our own subconscious and unconscious. Okay. Now, what is happening is when we feel the aversion and when we go out to seek this sensory gratification, what has actually happened is it's a very instinctive reaction. And this instinctive reaction, we don't have control. So here, most of us are like animals, So when we are seeking pleasure or when we run away from things, we are almost like an animal in there, like just as how an animal loves people who feed food, it runs away from people who throw stones or take a step towards it. So in that sense, there's no difference. We are like very much like animal. We are driven instinctively. Now, what is happening slowly when we gain wisdom, when we start understanding this reality, when we start listening to these teachings, then slowly what happens is we are this wisdom start to dawn in us, and we become somewhat introspective, and we are hearing this wisdom given to us by Patanjali, and through Shravana, through listening, we are able to stop and watch our mind. No, we are able to be aware. We are able to bring in a certain degree of awareness in what is happening. So this sense of having an awareness, the sense of being what is called as mindful, or being what is aware, this is driven mostly by wisdom. So if we don't understand what is happening at the deeper levels of our psyche, then we just get involved with the outer level. We don't stop to question what is happening. We don't stop to pause and see what is happening. So here is where wisdom is actually helpful. Okay. The second thing that helps us is yogic practices. So when we take to yogic practices, slowly what is happening is these yogic practices help us to slow down. It helps us to create certain pauses. So what was before like a very fast moving action, it's like a very fast moving, you are able to see it in slow motion. And in that slow motion, you're able to bring in a certain degree of wisdom, So this wisdom helps us to focus more on positive practices. And positive yogic practices help us also to gain more wisdom. So these both are interrelated, So both should go together. So that is why the combination of yoga and knowledge, is the ideal for most sadhakas. So just doing yogic practices without gaining wisdom, sometimes it can just become like a very mundane thing. We are continuously doing practices, but our wisdom doesn't always grow. And sometimes people just keep doing wisdom, hearing, listening, and all that, and they don't practice any meditation or other things. So that also is not helpful. So we need this balance of both. Now what happens is here, so this third step of actual experience of pain and pleasure, like the actual indulgence. So what happened now, before when we thought about the pizza, or when we saw an advertisement of our favorite sweet, um, rasgulla, gulab jamun, or whatever, then we just went out and sought it. So here now, once the wisdom kicks in, what is actually happening is there is a certain ability to change that pattern. So we are slowly able to mold ourselves, and this creates this ability to change or break or stop that old pattern. In itself creates new impressions, new samskaras, positive samskaras. And these erase the old samskaras. So this is like how, like we have our old patterns, our old brain wiring, they get rewired. Our new thinking and new impressions are created. So this is a cycle, So what just to recap, so first level is just this, the subtle mind of operation. We don't see what is happening. We just have memory. We act aversion or happiness towards things that I love. I get attracted or addicted. Things that I don't like, I get angry. I get repulsive. I develop hatred, or people I don't like, I develop this hatred. And we act it out at the gross level. Now, being a yogi, we slowly go through this process of transformation, where that when that subtle operation happens, we catch ourselves and we become aware, we wake up. It is no longer like just a bad dream where you don't have choice, but you experience that bad dream. You actually choose to wake up from that bad dream, and then you stop that pattern. So this is how the new impressions are created. Okay. So a couple of let me just stop this here. So a couple of points about this. Okay. So here what he's saying, sukha, is actually just a memory, meaning it is just a thought. There is really that joy that we are experiencing. It is really not there at that point. When the memory kicks in, that product or the thing is not there. So it is just a thought. So we are experiencing that at a very thought level. There is no object at that point. Like you think of your movie, you have a visual image of hanging out with your favorite buddies or something. So this is all just a thought at that level, and just that thought itself has a potential to give us pleasure. So the first level of pleasure we are experiencing is when the thought kicks in, even though that person or that object is not there. So there is a feeling of pleasure, the first feeling of pleasure. And then you actually go out, you decide to hang out with your friends, or you decide to watch that movie where your senses get involved. And this is a second layer of pleasure, second feeling of pleasure. So the first feeling of pleasure was there. Now the second feeling of pleasure has come, which is actual contact of the mind and the senses with that object. So here what is happening is that the impressions get created back into the mind. So when you involve the mind with the sense object, that impressions get stronger. So earlier it was just an impression which has a potential to create a thought. Now by indulging, you have recreated, you have reinforced that same thing. Okay. So now same thing with our repulsion. When you get repulsed from something, you get anxious about something. So the same process actually takes place. And in fact, I think one or two of you are attending also the Gita classes, and it's very similar to the verses we saw in the Gita class, the Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa Sangot Stesho Pachayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodho Vichayate. So which is when you keep thinking about your object, about your pleasure, or when you allow the thoughts, about this thing to take over you, then what happens? Then you feel the sense of attraction, Dhyayato Vishayat Pumsam Sangos Desho Bhajayate. You get attached to that, you get addicted to that mentally. So this is a mental addiction. He in Gita he gives that 4 steps. How this thing happens. So the first one is thinking of the object. This second one is attachment. And then what else? A third one is kama, which is desire. So then the desire creeps into actually seek that object, to go after that object. Then if you don't get that object, what happens? What is our reaction? If you get that object, you create new impressions. Like if you indulge in that same object, you create. Now, if in case you don't get that object, in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, it's not explained, but what does it say in Gita?
Krodha.
Krodha, meaning anger. There is anger. See, why do we feel anger? Anger is thwarted desire. When your desire is not fulfilled, you feel anger either towards that person who obstructs your desire or towards those situations and circumstances. So we'll go on blaming everyone, whether it is the government, people, or whomsoever, we'll go on blaming. We'll find somebody to blame if the desire is not fulfilled. Okay, so this is this is the process of how the psychological functioning of pleasure and pain happens. Okay, so now let us come back to the earlier sloka, because now we can think about what he's referring to here, as he calls as the combination of drik and darshana shakti. Drik here is that we as consciousness are not caught up in this drama. What drama we are talking about? This constant sense of attraction, repulsion that is going on. This is not happening at the level of consciousness. Okay, because at the level of consciousness, we are actually pure. We are untainted by this. But we has this intellect get drawn into this experience. So when we identify ourselves as buddhi or as ego, you know, then what happens is the sense of asmita, he calls as I-ness, is created. So this is what we say in yoga philosophy, there is purusha, which is pure consciousness. And when it gets entangled with prakriti, meaning an object of or an aspect of matter or nature, then this kind of an entanglement happens, and then the identity comes. So there is a first identity of prakriti is this buddhi, mahat, intelligence, and then that intelligence identifies itself and becomes as ahankara. He calls it as ahankara, which here is called Patanjali calls it as asmita. That I-ness comes in. So then what happens? Then we take ourselves to be the one who is caught up in this experience. So we cannot free ourselves from this addictive thinking patterns or this addictive behavior patterns. We are not able to free ourselves because we're completely mixed up with that identification. We are not able to see that we are pure, we are untainted, and we don't need that object to make us happy. We feel that if this object is not there, I cannot be happy, and this is what ego does. Ego creates the sense of identity, that with this object alone, I can be happy. So then what happens, all this, what is this identification here? So this identification is the sense of feeling we get, or the perceptions we feel, or the sensations we have. So that is what ego is. See, ego by itself is not something that is entangled by all this. The consciousness by itself is not entangled by any objects. But the moment we feel that I am the separate entity who is experiencing, having this feeling, this feeling of good or feeling of bad, then I'm entangled, because I fall into this trap of ego, this identification. Or I suffer also from anxiety, from worries and all that, because the sense of separation has happened. The sense of independent, individualized identity has happened. So when I'm an independent individual identity, then all the host of worries about future, everything comes into my mind, So this is the conflict, what he presents here. Drik darshana saktayor. The confusion between this drik meaning pure seer, where there is only consciousness, And, then the darshana saktayor, meaning that will to see, that ability to see, meaning that ability to go down into the world of sense objects or the mind objects, even that what is created by mind, So we have this notion of enjoyer then, and that causes all the things, all the other experiences to follow forth from that. End it here, since we